Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Damon Friedman Show. Not just a podcast, this is a movement. And I'm here to tell you that today's podcast is going to be amazing because I did something crazy a year ago. I decided I wanted to start a new journey. I wanted to challenge myself. It was the new year, and as usual, once January 1 hits, everybody has a New Year's goal. Some people kind of fizzle out after a week, most a month. For me, I kept going. What did I do? I decided to start a journey on, doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And some people go, dude, you're too old for that. You know, at first, I got to admit that I was a little intimidated. But at the end of the day, man, it's all about going in and testing your mettle. It really is. A guy like me, I served 20 years in the military, predominantly in special operations, and I'm looking for something new, a new hobby. I can't jump the way that I used to. I can't dive the way that I used to. I can't blow stuff up the way that I used to. I mean, I had a pretty incredible life for 20 years, and then all of a sudden that stops. Now what? What do I do? Jiu-Jitsu. That's what this is. So this is something that I've learned through my journey. And just recently, I picked up my blue belt in Jiu-Jitsu. Something that I'm super proud of. There's only 5 belts. There's a white belt, there's blue, there's purple, there's brown, and then there's black. I'm on a 10-year journey to get my black belt. And it's not really even about getting your black belt. It's about the process. It's about the different lessons learned that you can appreciate throughout this journey, this progress. And so today, I want to talk a lot about jiu-jitsu, but particularly one thing, and that is the power of the tap. Something that's far more profound than just the techniques we practice on the mats. I want to talk about the power of the tap and where there's this incredible trust involved in the whole process, where there's this vulnerability throughout the process and the power of the tap through it all. You know, when we start training in jiu-jitsu, there's a lot of emphasis on the submission. There is. There's emphasis on the sweeps. And trust me, you want to dominate on the sweeps, I'm telling you. Positions, the different positions. Also the physical aspect of the sport. I mean, it's very dynamic. You look at mixed martial arts, and jiu-jitsu is right in the middle of it. The best fighters out there have a very solid background in jiu-jitsu. It's not just about stand-up. I mean, it's all about the ground. And so, you know, there's these different aspects of jiu-jitsu that are just so challenging, and at times it could be very overwhelming. So I've had to kind of take a step back and look at the progress, the journey, all the different pieces that make it so unique and so special. So with all that being said, there's another layer that's just as important as the submissions, the sweeps, the positions, the physical aspect of the whole thing. And that's the mental and emotional side. In particular, there's something we all need to learn. And I'm going to tell you right now, as we were developing this podcast, specifically the power of the tap, I'm here to tell you that there's something that we all need to learn from that and how to. And when I say tap, I don't just mean tapping out of a submission. I'm not talking about quitting. No, not at all. I mean, the tap is very prevalent in jiu-jitsu, and there's a reason for it. What I want to talk about is the power behind the tap itself, the vulnerability it requires, and how it can help us build trust, not only with our partners, but with ourselves. And you may be asking, like, what are you talking about? How do you build trust in ourselves and with our partners by getting tapped out? Just hang with me for a second. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. When I first started tapping, the whole concept of tapping, I mean, what? I'm going to tap. You got my arm, you got my neck, you're choking me out. There's no way. Tapping was something that I really struggled with when I first started. And it wasn't just because I hated losing. Well, no, that's true. I do hate to lose. And I don't know too many people that like to lose. I know more people that hate losing thing. Though that was a part of it. I'm admitting it. I didn't want to show weakness. And I felt like tapping was a form of weakness. I didn't want to admit that I couldn't handle something or that I was getting caught in whatever it is that my opponent was trying to do. And in my mind, tapping meant I wasn't good enough, that I stunk. But over time, through experiences on the mat and guidance from my teammates, I learned that tapping isn't a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength. Strength in knowing when to let go. Boom! You hear that? Strength in knowing when to let go. Strength in trusting your partner and in yourself. Just follow me on this one, okay? Not too many lessons learned, but here on the Power of the Tap. One of the people who really helped me see this in a new way, I'm gonna call this person EK, female. She's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, an instructor, and I'm telling you right now, she's a machine. We call her the ninja, and there's a reason why. Okay, I'll never forget the first time I talked with her. I was a white belt, and she's already instructed. She's got a couple of gyms out there, and she's been crushing it for quite a while. She was one of the top 3 in the Pan Am Games in the world. I mean, so she's not just a jiu-jitsu player. She's a jiu-jitsu queen. All right. I mean, when we talk about tapping, she's tapped out plenty of people. So I'm sitting here and I'm talking to her, and I was this white belt. She was, already very experienced. And we talked about rolling, and that I had zero expectations of winning. But I thought, hey, maybe I can put up a good fight. And she said something I'll never forget. She said this, Damon, you have to understand something. Jiu-jitsu isn't about trying to win every time. It's about learning. The tap is a tool, not a failure. It's not about you being weak. It's about you trusting your partner enough to know when to step back. You tap to protect yourself, to learn, and to grow. Whoa. What did I just say? It's about trusting your partner enough to know when to step back. You tap to protect yourself, to learn, and to grow. That night it hit me. It wasn't just about getting out of a submission or trying to fight through everything. It was more about being vulnerable. The tap is an act of trust. Trust in your partner that they won't hurt you. Trust in yourself to learn, and trust in the process that growth comes from those moments of tapping, from recognizing when you don't have control. Now, fast forward a few months, and I started seeing this, in practice more and more. I remember my friend, he was also a white belt at the time, and he really struggled with tapping, just like I did. There was this one session where he got caught in an armbar, and just like I used to, he refused to tap. His face was red, and you could see he was in pain, but he wasn't willing to give up. And I said, dude, why don't you just tap? I mean, his arms basically flailing because his pride, right, was on the hinge there. And he hesitated clearly, and he was embarrassed. And he said, I didn't want to lose. I, as calm and composed as I could, just looked at him and said, tapping doesn't mean you lose, bro. Tapping means you're learning. You have to trust yourself enough to admit when you don't have control. When you do that, you'll grow faster than you ever have imagined. And that's when it clicked for me. The whole thing, the trust, the vulnerability, and the power of the tap aren't just about submission. It's not just about grappling. It's about life. Follow me on this one. For all you non-jiu-jitsu people out there, for all of my jiu-jitsu people, you're like, dude, Damon's preaching on this one. Yes, keep listening. In life, we can't always have control. We can't always be winning. And sometimes we need to admit when things aren't going our way. I don't know about you, but I have a very difficult time in recognizing that. And that's why I'm surrounded by pretty good people who help me, mentor me, show me. Tapping out isn't about giving up. Although it seems like it, especially when you're watching the big MMA fight, right? Big UFC stuff. It's like, oh, dude, the guy just tapped out. Well, maybe he lost a lot of money and he lost the competition. And maybe there is a lot to lose. But I'm going to tell you right now, those are the moments where you learn the most. I remember my first tournament, and I was scared. I'm talking about, man, I was so nervous because I didn't want to look dumb. I didn't want to lose. I didn't want to be that guy with the head down and my partner with the hand up. I mean, come on. Some of you out there like, what's the big deal? Well, dude, it is a big deal, especially if you're a guy that likes to compete and likes to win, like me. And I just remember, man, you're never really going to learn until you get into the arena. And I just remember having a go at it. And I just remember all of a sudden it's like we're battling it out. And I was lucky. I ended up 2 competitions. I won both. And I ended up getting first place. I'm not saying that to brag. I'm saying that, man, I went through the process. But I'll tell you what, do you know how many times I had to tap out before I showed up to that competition? Just go to my gym. Go to my gym, talk to my professor, talk to my coaches. I'm getting tapped out a few times every time I go and I'm rolling. I'm getting tapped out by blue belts and purple belts and brown belts and black belts. The white belts, I got that now. All right. Unless you're a professional white belt, you've been a white belt for 6 to 10 years. All right. No bueno, bro. Going back to the tap, it's about recognizing that it's okay to step back, take a breathe, just breathe for a second and learn from the situation. And in acts of strength and not weakness, when my tournament got recorded and I look back, I could see where I made a mistake every single time. It was one of the best things I'd learned. And just like when I'm at the gym during normal practice and I'm having another black belt watch me while I'm rolling, they're coming back and I'm getting tapped out. I'm like, what happened? I got no problem tapping because I'm learning, man. I'm going to learn more about the tap than I would even if I won. I'm telling you that right now. I roll with a bunch of white belts. They're great. I mean, I was there. I mean, I submit them. It's not really a big victory. I'm not really learning at all, but they are. And then I take a step and do the same thing with the other blues, purples, and browns and blacks. And trust me, they have their way with me. And I've learned something. The power of the tap, it's an act of strength and not weakness. It's how I'm going to grow. I got to get in there. I got to have the intestinal fortitude. I got to have the courage to get in. As I've continued my journey in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I've come to realize that trust and vulnerability are the foundation of progress, not just on the mats, but in relationships and in life. And the best part, the more I've learned to trust my teammates, the more I've been able to trust myself. And the more I've trusted myself, the more I've been able to grow. When I first started doing jiu-jitsu, I remember I didn't know what I was doing. I could not say with absolute confidence that I trusted myself because I didn't know what to do. How do you get on full mount? What do you do in the guard? What do you do on side mount? What do you do, when the guy's got his hand, his arm wrapped around your neck and trying to do a guillotine? What do you do? He's trying to choke you up. I'm sitting there going, I'm trying to, what do I do? I didn't have a lot of trust in myself. But I tell you what, I had a lot of trust in my partner and the guy who was choking me out. That sounds weird, but it's true, right? The guy's choking him he's like, what do I do? The more I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, the more I realize how applicable it is in life. I need you to follow me on this one because I'm not here just to talk about Jiu-Jitsu, although I love Jiu-Jitsu and you should give it a go. All right. And if you are older, I'm here to tell you, you still have enough. Still have enough in the tank. I know a guy who started at 70 and got his black belt at 80 something. So if he could do it, anybody could do it. I'm just here to tell you, you just got to be more careful and methodical. But the more I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, the more I realize how applicable it is in life. We're constantly running into challenges, and how we respond dictates the outcome. Just think about it. Think about what I just said. We're constantly running into challenges, and how we respond dictates the outcome. Just think about every single time when you were in a conflict, when you're in some friction or something, if you would have just changed the way that you said things. And sometimes it's not what you say, it's how you say it. It matters. Whether it's an argument with your spouse, if you're married out there, you know what it's like to have plenty of arguments, right? It's like after the 1 year romantic period, something happens at 366 days. I don't know. Day one is all of a sudden your spouse isn't as nice as you had, when you first met them. There's all this friction going on. Maybe you're dating somebody, right? And there's friction between you and that person, or maybe it's a coworker. Maybe it's a boss. Maybe it's a subordinate, somebody that works for you, or some kind of conflict that's happening in your life. Bro, just think about it. Think about the conflicts. At the end of the day, when you're transparent, when you're honest, when you're vulnerable, if you're authentic, then you win. In this whole podcast that I'm talking about, I'm saying, dude, submissions, when you're submitted, it doesn't necessarily mean that you lose. It's not. I think people are too extreme about losing. They lose at something and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, I lost everything. That's not the case at all. Go back, press the stop button and rewind. The whole power of the tap is so incredibly important to understand the concept that at the end of the day, when you're transparent, when you're being honest, when you're being vulnerable, if you're authentic, then you win. I'm going to intertwine all this. Now, every situation is different, and I recognize that. And I'm not talking about allowing people to push you around or walk all over you. No, that is not what I'm talking about. In fact, if there's anybody who's pushing you around, all right, then you need some jiu-jitsu, baby. All right? All right, don't let anybody put their hands on you. That's not what I'm talking about. All right, I'm not talking about abuse. I'm not talking about people walking all over you. You need to stand up, have some respect for yourself, some pride for yourself. And if somebody's not willing to do that, then you don't need to be in that situation. And if they ever put their hands on you, you do some jiu-jitsu, brother. Okay, that's what you do. I'm talking about those moments where it's about learning. You're having this engagement with somebody that you trust, you have confidence in, and the bottom line is it? What does that relationship look like? If in fact they're important to you, if you care about them and you're important to them, check it out. The power of the tap is applicable. It really is, because it's about learning and accepting the tap as a moment of growth. I would assume, right? I know this message may be a little confusing to the majority of people, unless you do jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu, man, I'm telling you, it changes your world. If you do jiu-jitsu, you understand exactly what I'm trying to explain. But I hope that the concept of the tap makes sense, that it resonates with you, especially in times where it's best to just take a step back and learn from the situation you're currently in. So before I even end this thing, I want to share this one moment of clarity, okay? I remember the day I was coming back, doing jiu-jitsu, and I don't know, I've been in for 3 months. I've been going there 3 days a week. And I still felt like I didn't even know what I was doing. All I was doing was getting choked out, getting, destroyed, and then going home. And I remember should I even be doing this anymore? Do you ever find yourself in life where you're having these initiatives and you're passionate about when you started, but then after a while it's like, why am I even in this thing? What is the purpose of all this? I'm just getting beat up every single day. It could be in business. It could be in a relationship. It could be an opportunity. You thought it was a good idea at first, but then after a while, you're like, I just don't feel like getting submitted again. Man, I just remember having a conversation with my instructor, and he's like, listen to me, Damon. You're not going to know anything for a couple months. And by month 6, hopefully, you'll have that one moment. But I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to tell you something about the tap. Man, I remember this conversation. He goes, you realize that this is the only sport that you could go all out and you could test your mettle, and right to the very end, you could just tap. And then you could do it all over again. It's not like Muay Thai. It's not like, street fighting. It's not like all the other arts, right? Like, you can literally go in through this crucible. You could go into the arena and you could clash, right? All the way up to the point to the tap and go right all over again. Think about how many reps you can have to become an incredible athlete, an incredible jiu-jitsu practitioner without ever getting hurt. He goes, every time you test your mettle, you learn something new every time you tap. Just think about the growth. I've been doing this for over a year now, and now I'm realizing more and more that I can do things that I've never been able to do. I can go farther than I've ever wanted to, than ever thought of, because the tap exists. What does that mean to you? What does that mean to you in your life? To be able to go and all in, and then all of a sudden be able to say, you know what? I've learned enough. I'm good. Let's have another go. So I leave you with this. Next time you're rolling and you find yourself caught in a submission in life, or feel frustrated in a situation that you have little to zero control in, remember that tapping isn't a sign of defeat. It's an opportunity to trust yourself, to trust your partner, and to learn. because the real power of the tap isn't avoiding it. It's embracing it as a tool for growth. I'm going to tell you something. I've been using the tap in just about every aspect of my life, in my relationships, in my marriage, in my business, in the nonprofit work, and all sorts of initiatives that are very important to me. The power of the tap. There's trust, there's vulnerability, and there's power behind all of it. I hope that all of you understand the power of the tap. And just remember, it's an opportunity of growth, not failure, not defeat. And that's when you win. All of you ladies and gentlemen out there, I hope you find your nearest jiu-jitsu gym out there and give yourself a shot, because I'm telling you right now, it's going to change your world and you'll learn more and more the power of the tap. May all of you know that there's a God in heaven that loves you, has great plans for you, and don't ever forget, the tap is your friend. Godspeed.